All right, and we are on for this week's HangOps. Um, Today is just really an open discussion. For those of you that are watching this later, we were just discussing before starting how horribly pegged my CPU is at the moment. So if for some reason we have poor audio quality, we can blame Chris's Chrome instance. So I don't have anything specifically I want to talk about. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? I'm sure that we can come up with something.
Can we do a real quick recap of the fabricator thing? Because I missed that. How did that go?
I have no idea because I wasn't there either.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Wow. Okay.
in fact, like I hit Brandon up this morning. It was like, "So we doing hang ops today?" He's like, "Yeah, I did it on Wednesday." I'm like, "Oh, I forgot about that." I think I was on a plane when that went down.
Yeah, I don't know. I was stuck in a meeting, I think.
I'm
Well,
not sure
I
which
just
was more
wrapped up.
productive.
I just wrapped up the OpenStack summit.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually still in Paris right now. So
That would
I'm
explain the
flying out tomorrow. Yeah,
that would explain the lag in
it was actually.
connection.
Oh, it was amazing. It was actually the first one I'd ever been to, and it's amazing to see how big the community is. Like, I guess it just never registered with me how big it was, and it it has real business value, and it's amazing. It really is awesome.
So I'm not sure if it's a good thing or bad thing, but I've never actually ended up deploying OpenStack. But I have heard horror stories about it, so it's interesting. Um, like it would be fun to like sit down and actually do that, like to take a weekend, well, to take a couple days and get some hardware and actually spin up an OpenStack cluster.
Well, I mean, I'm attempting to make it easier for everybody with the chef work I'm doing. Um, Leveraging chef provisioning now, I can actually create single stack nodes on your laptop that you can actually spin up VMs inside of it. I mean, it's a very yo dog kind of thing, but it's pretty slick. So
I think that's on
I
my
can link that
list.
out to anyone.
That would be cool. Um, but oh, that's actually an interesting point. I should probably set up botbot.me for the chat room so that we can actually go look, or not the chat room, but the IRC room, so that we can actually go back and look at things. That would be kind of awesome. Whoa, did I just say see code freeze? Oh, I guess code freeze makes sense at this time of the year. It's coming to be time for the retails to happen, and us not push code because yeah. Um, well, fun. That's actually sounds that sounds interesting. I should go look and see if there are any interesting talks. Were there things that we should go check out about that came out of the OpenStack Summit outside of whatever the funny name the new version of OpenStack has?
Um, in general, I just it's awesome to see how much excitement there is around it, and specifically operators. They're going to attempt to create a sanctioned product from the OpenStack Foundation, um, focused for operators. So companies can say that when an operator is working on OpenStack and writes a script that goes upstream into the OpenStack project, they can say that their operators are actually now committers to OpenStack. Because as of right now, a lot of the way the things have just kind of out, you have to be like a real developer for to get considered to be um, an actual productive member, or not, that's the wrong word, a committer, an ATC. You need to write code. Operators aren't actually eligible, from what I understand, to become ATCs. So it's a really neat kind of paradigm switch, and if you guys are on the mailing lists at all or anything, which are especially the operators, it's pretty low traffic, but there's starting that conversation now, which is I'm personally really excited for it because that I mean operators we write code, right?
Yeah, what's
We
the distinction between an operator and a developer, according to that community?
um well it's so an operator is someone who runs the cloud, and a developer is someone who writes the Python or the bits to make the stuff happen. It's you have to commit to one of the core projects, or commit to StackForge to be eligible for an ATC, which is an authorized technical contributor. I might be lying there about
So
it.
the
So it's a
developers write the code and they throw it over the wall to operations?
It's scripting versus object-oriented scripting.
Okay. All right. I get that makes some more sense, I guess.
Well, I mean, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like, in a lot of that's exactly what's going on here in many ways, right? Is a lot of people that are developing OpenStack don't actually run production OpenStack loads because, I mean, it's a different world. And I know I've talked to people that have like visited that code base. It's definitely not anything I will be getting commit bid on anytime soon. Like, holy crap! Um, yes, I can kind of sort of write Python, but I kind of sort of yeah, no, we just won't go there.
Was there any talk, JJ, about like the Nova stack and like the anything improvements to networking, since that's usually discussed as one of the weaker points of OpenStack?
Yes, and I couldn't actually get in those rooms because they were like they are trying to fix that Nova Neutron networking, and there's a lot of people, and they came out with a lot of commitments for the Vancouver summit coming up in May or April. So we should see some strong movement for Kilo, which is the next release. Oh, and also it was announced this next year's summit, or sorry, not the next summit, which is in Vancouver, but the next summit after that is actually going to be in Tokyo. So if that's cool, I don't know. Yay.
So if you want to go to Tokyo, you should become an ATC.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I'm looking at Dave's titled Certified DevOps, did anyone see that AWS, or Amazon rather, dropped that the secondary level certification? They're calling it like Certified DevOps Engineer.
Really?
Yeah, let me see if I can find a link to it, and I'll post it in the chat room or in the IRC room.
That's so bad. So bad.
Amazon troll like that before.
Well, I thought like when someone posted it, like in our internal HIP chat, I was like, oh, someone must be joking. Oh no, they're not joking. Because like a second later, you see the link, and it's like, oh crap. Let's find it. We were talking earlier about having too many tabs open. I've got too many applications open in addition to too many tabs. All right. Now to find my IRC client, which I seem to have lost.
This is the only thing that popped up for me.
Okay, I just linked to it. The DevOps certified DevOps engineer dash.
I like that they put the dash professional there. Because that's totally necessary.
I don't even do a whole lot with AWS, but I want to get it just to, have like a troll status of DevOps.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I feel like I should go get these certifications just because, like, it would be fun to like put on my LinkedIn, because it's like, yes, at this point, the only certifications I hold are just random. Like I am a certified puppet master, and I am a certified. I am certified on Solaris 9.
The
Right
best part
there.
is that the DevOps certification from Amazon is in beta. Like what? I'm almost a DevOps guy, but we're not sure about all the criteria yet. So it's in beta right now.
If you want to get certified, you just send a message to Patrick. He'll send you one.
I know. I feel like I should go downstairs and get my my
But
certificate.
yeah, I can just photocopy mine and put your name on top of it.
We should just make like a PDF so people can just fill it in and print it out.
Yeah. Well, let's register like DevOpsify me, and basically you print out like a PDF certificate for yourself.
Oh, that would be actually awesome because we could totally get the original PDF and write some. Okay, so I'm just gonna say PHP because that's how I know how to do this because I've done it before. But like have it generate a PDF, like overlay your name onto it, and you could just like add it as a badge on your site. You're now DevOps certified.
You could get like a sparkly DevOps princess one too.
That would be awesome. I would still be a certified sparkly DevOps.
Chris, we have to make this. We have to make this happen. Like, there's no reason why we should never not make this happen. Oh, that's awesome.
Troll the rest of the industry.
Yes, come
Troll
on.
Rackspace and
have
Amazon
to.
for creating their silly certifications with DevOps in the name.
We can specifically call them out saying that ours is not in beta and move further ahead.
Oh, this has gone a horrible direction, but so awesome direction all at the same time. Wow. Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because like, it. Wait a second. Uh-oh. Yep, someone already bought DevOps at me. Anyway, okay, so JJ, go find us a domain name.
I'm on it. I'm on
Um,
it. How about DevOps? Find me. DevOps, find me.
I just discovered the .wtf today.
Say that one more time.
WTF. I didn't realize it was officially available.
Yes, it's a thing.
Yeah, so $30. I pretty much just bought another domain.
Yeah, I have to stop buying domains.
I was thinking the same thing. There was one I bought recently that was DevOps related as a total joke, and I never ended up doing the joke. Let me go see what it was, because this may actually be a good fit. But like the hard part is I get what they're trying to say, right? Like they're trying to. So I guess what we really need to do as an industry, as much as I hate to apply labels, we really should come up with a label that does actually fit this, because DevOps is really more the cultural aspect, but there's a skill set that they're trying to explain, but I don't know how we get there. Like how, and the hard part is that the skill set they're trying to explain is not actually
Too many things.
too many things. For the record, I don't. I'm not very good at multitasking. If anyone has never noticed this, yes, Chris's whip limit is 1. Like the problem is, at the end of the day, what makes us good at what we do has nothing to do with this particular skill set. The fact that I have actually managed to set up printing in Solaris 9 is not useful to anyone. The fact that I was able to figure it out and pass the test on it is actually probably useful because it means I can dig through super cryptic documentation and deal with the most arcane technology ever.
Or read the Coles notes.
The what notes?
Or read the Coles notes. Or whatever like prep exam book that happens for every single certification.
I don't see anything on the Amazon certified DevOps engineer, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't look to me like systems engineer. Like if we're going to make the distinction between systems administrator and systems engineer, being that an engineer writes code and an administrator just clicks on Oracle's installer or whatever. I don't see anything in there that's not like what a systems engineer should be able to do. They
Yeah,
can write in a high-level language. They understand some stuff about Agile, and they have passed their earlier thing that says they're a certified systems, whatever they call it, systems operator.
to sit on top of the SysOps administrator and the certified developer certification, right? So the SysOps covers creating and administering systems, and the developer covers Agile and development and automation and scripting and programming. And so
this looks like a move from SysOps to SysEng. That's what it looks like to me.
That makes sense.
If we classify an engineer as somebody who has the ability to create things that didn't exist before.
I don't know, but that's what architect is for, right?
Well, architects just draw boxes on whiteboards, dude.
But that's what the AWS certified solutions architect is basically covering. And they have an associate level and a professional level, which both cover exactly what that is already. It's probably just basically, a cash grab. Where they just regurgitate pieces of all their different certifications into a new one.
Interesting. We'll have to see how it turns out. Like, at the end of the day, my guess is many of us won't bother to go do it. I'm looking forward to. So, my question is at what point do any of these certifications become useful? Like, I know I've heard that the Red Hat one's is pretty hard to get, but is it useful? Like,
define useful.
Well, I mean, Dave, you're in a management position, right? So you do hire.
I'm an architect. I'm hands-on.
Hands-on drawing the boxes?
I draw a lot of boxes on whiteboards.
But okay, so
I don't manage anybody.
Okay, gosh. Oh, then my argument is flawed because my thing is right, like in concept there's a level of knowledge that you should be able to expect someone that has this certification because it is well designed. So for example, the one that comes to mind is we know that people that have the CCIE certification, they probably understand routing pretty good. They probably understand networking pretty well, and switching and the fabric.
Hold on. So the CCIE, that was the first real certification out there, right? The whole DevOps thing, it's like, does that kind of certification is the equivalent of, at least in my opinion, of certifying someone knowing how to problem solve, right? I mean, if you look at it at a very empirical level, our jobs as a quote-unquote DevOps or ops engineer, whatever, it's problem solve. We have complex issues and we break it down to smaller issues and resolve those issues, right?
So JJ, you are breaking up like horrible, but I think what you're saying makes sense. It's that idea, right, of there's a technology that so like the CCIE actually has there's a knowledge space back there, but like this DevOps certification, it's problem solving. It's not actually. Is it really something that can be tested, right?
I mean, you said useful before, Chris. Like, has anyone? I mean, I've been doing this for a while. Has anyone heard of any certification besides CCIE that anyone that you ever met considered useful or proved anything? I mean, I remember getting the Solaris certification, being like, "Woo! I'm awesome! I got Solaris certification. This really proves something." And then I went to work for this consulting company, and the guy next to me had a Solaris certification and knew nothing about Solaris. I mean, barely anything. Knew a whole bunch about Linux, but had basically memorized the multiple choice garbage and then got it. And then I felt like an idiot for having gone and gotten the Solaris certification because I mean, it was obvious that we had a wide disparity in our understanding of Solaris. So besides CCIE, like what certification have we even heard of that? Like somebody was like, oh, that person has that certification. I want to hire them for this project or that project.
I think it depends on levels, because you can't just look at it as a, what certification in a broad stroke. But I used to hire for like intro techs, and we always wanted them to have, A plus and Network plus was good just for like, they're super basic, but
Yeah.
hey, do you have these two things? It shows that not only are you committed to the job that you want to try to learn things, but you have at least a general memorization ability to say like, oh, this, subnet masks to this or something like that. Beyond that, when you're getting up to like higher levels, I mean, the Red Hat system administrator was probably one of the hardest certs I've taken. I mean, I have maybe like 7 or 8 certs. And only because it wasn't a multiple choice. It was, here's a box and here's your steps of doing stuff, and you have no internet access. Like, you had to know man pages, you had to know, how to search for some things, and how to know how to get something up and running in a repeatable fashion. So I mean, it wasn't like hard, but for like Red Hat systems engineer certification, that seems like, that one I actually look at and say, oh look, they actually can configure a live system under pressure in a controlled environment. Although there's certs that I know of aren't necessarily. I mean, they're they're not troubleshooting, they're multiple choice or narrowing down some things. It's not actually like, hey, set up this box in 2 hours and make sure it works. At least in that case, I know someone can memorize the steps to do it for the Red Hat certifications. But most other ones, yeah, I didn't care about, especially at any level higher than an intro, of just like showing interest in the career path.
I would agree with that. And the only time my certification ever mattered for any point of was more for that point of discussion, right? Like when I got my Solaris 9 certification, I was still a student, so it was a thing that helped me to have discussions about jobs and helped qualify me as someone that didn't have a ton of experience, but I had the Sun certification. Like, okay, I obviously cared about moving forward with my education, and I had a baseline knowledge, because even if you just memorized all the things about the Solaris certification, at least you understood enough to pass the exam.
Well,
So
and that's along the lines of starting conversations. When I was applying for jobs last year a lot, it was the main thing that got me noticed was certifications. Not necessarily experience or anything, but just because I had a Red Hat certification and a Puppet certification, I got all sorts of people just talking to me saying like, hey, what do you do? Like, are you looking for something else? And even though at the time I wasn't even doing Puppet, I didn't know much of it, and I was managing Red Hat, but it wasn't much beyond that. So they didn't care. The certifications got me noticed, and experience got me more in the door and further along in processes. So I mean, certs weren't the defining fact of what I could do, but they were, hey, look, this guy at least looks like he knows what he's talking about.
So certs are definitely more useful, it sounds like, when you're at a lower level of knowledge or experience or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Especially like Chris says, like coming out of college, I mean, that would be a great way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, if you don't have experience of either open source projects or big companies that you've worked at, I think certs are the best way to get noticed when you have no experience or nothing else to lean on.
I think these days, though, it's a lot easier to take that time and just publish something open source or contribute to open source, because any company who's worth working for is going to notice that over and above a certification, right?
I agree.
Much more practical experience.
Well, and but that's a very recent thing, right? I would say that ability as operations professionals to really start to do things that are open source, and you can say, well, oh, hey, in my spare time, I created this infrastructure using, we were talking about chef provisioning earlier. So I've got this cookbook that builds up an entire Cassandra cluster using chef provisioning, and I published it. That's a big deal. I wrote this, Puppet module, or this, Puppet type and provider. Those types of things, they definitely didn't exist when I was in college, and they have only recently been something that's really gained a foothold in probably the last 3 to 4 years. So that is an interesting point unto itself, right? Is how much the world has changed since we started in this game in a relatively short amount of time. Because I haven't been doing this very long. I've only been out of college since 2007. So, but yeah, I think I beat that topic to death.
It's be a lot easier now to sort of post a repo with a vagrant file that basically demonstrates that you can build a whole system, right? And hand it off to someone and say, run this one command, and it's going to demonstrate, my level of expertise in automation and systems design and whatever else, logging and monitoring and all the other nice things that you want to put on it.
I think the amount of companies looking at a GitHub profile versus a LinkedIn profile are a lot smaller looking at GitHub. So whether the companies looking at GitHub profiles are probably ones you'd want to work for more, but if I was coming out of college, now I wouldn't have known to beef up my GitHub profile over my LinkedIn profile if I was looking for work.
Well, so this actually leads into a really interesting point, right? Like, I've got people that I know are looking to get into the operations field, and I tend to spend a fair amount of time around, whether high schools or college-age students, talking about careers and career paths. What is the starting point for ops? Like, everybody I've ever talked to, they didn't choose operations per se. Like, they ended up in a position that allowed them to pivot there. So, like, I started working the help desk, which, in turn, I walked into the data center and I knew that this is where I wanted to be the rest of my life. I wanted to run IT infrastructure.
Love at first sight.
As crazy as it sounds, absolutely yes. Like and it was a CSU campus with an old, like, true like mainframe style data center. So, like, you walk through the first door and you can start to hear the whir of the data center, and then you card through the next door where the operators used to sit, and you're up on the platform, you've got windows out, and then you walk through the third door you have to key through, and you finally are in the data center.
And you zip up because it's freezing. You yell to everyone else because nobody can hear what you're saying.
Well, to be fair, it was a state-run data center, so it wasn't actually that cold. But I get what you mean.
I think the entry, the best way to enter any career is sort of through the community. So whether you start a club on your campus or you hit meetup groups, certainly contributing to open source if you can. Nowadays, that's a great way to do it internationally and sort of build up experience. And you can still hop on IRC, ask people questions, ask people for advice. People do that on Stack Exchange all the time. I think community is the way to go, for sure.
Well, so where I struggle is, like, the things that have gotten me professional jobs have never been while I did those things on the side and I learned and was able to be conversant about things, the things that really helped actually get me hired beyond that first job was the war stories. And I know what it's like to boot to the secondary disk and find out it doesn't have a boot partition on it. I know what it's like to to sit and know that if you don't fix this thing right now, like, the entire campus doesn't have email. But it's that junior. Like, how many of us actually hire juniors? How many organizations are bringing on those junior sysadmins? How do we encourage that flow? I mean, Andrew Clay Schaefer has talked a lot about you don't need to you can't hire DevOps engineers. You can't hire DevOps. You need to grow DevOps. You need to grow your engineers from within instead of trying to hire the best and brightest, because they just there's just not enough of them to go around. So grow them.
I've hired tons of junior sysadmins, and I've also interviewed a lot of junior sysadmins uh, who, when they went through the interview process, I said, you know, I can tell that this is something that you're interested in, but you need to brush up on this, this, and this if you want to have a serious chance of getting an entry-level job, because these are the areas where you're deficient. And like, I'm not saying you need to like become an expert, right? Because that's the whole joke that I've said over the years about running Linux on your desktop at home is not the same thing as deploying 10,000 servers in production. But, I've definitely tried to coach people up and say these are the things that you need to work on, and definitely have hired people at a junior level many times.
I'm a strong believer of like starting people in support. Actually, like I started in support. I think starting in support's a great way to sort of build an understanding of the larger organization, and also if we're talking about DevOps, it's the best way to sort of foster empathy towards like your coworkers, right? Like figuring out the pain of your customers, but also the fact that you're sending tons of tickets for bugs or issues with slow response times or whatever it is. You get to know what's actually the pulse of the company from the customer's perspective, and that's going to give you a really good view on what the company actually needs. And getting in there is a lot easier than getting in at a sysadmin position, right? And then once you're in the door, you can ask the questions like, what do I need? What do I need to make that jump? That's where I'm going. So tell me how to get there, right?
That makes sense, and I would totally agree with you, because it's always funny. I do occasionally run into that sysadmin that has, and this was more common when I worked in the state system. Like you would run into sysadmins that like they had never in their lives worked support, and it was obvious.
It's very obvious. Yeah.
They just had no understanding of, well, yeah, we actually do need to ask more questions here. The person on the other side of that ticket, they may not actually know what you think they know. And until you've had to, day in, day out, when you ask you get to a point where you stop asking the operating system that people are running, and you start asking them if they've got a green button in the bottom left-hand corner of their screen.
Yeah.
You don't understand what it is actually like to support those things.
I've also talked to a lot of data center engineers that work for the data center, and they've always been like, hey, does your company have any jobs? I want to move up out of this support engineer position into like a sysadmin position. So I think, kind of like Steve was saying, that's another avenue. I mean, obviously there's only a certain number of data centers in the world, but that's another great way, because then you kind of get a little bit of Chris's, I'm in awe because I'm in the data center and there's thousands of machines and I really want to be here. You kind of get exposure to that, and the criteria for getting hired there is probably not that high. It's like identify the right server in the right rack and press the power button, when somebody calls, and you can move up from there.
And not be colorblind. I had that problem working in a data center and not being able to tell the difference between red and green lights.
They have those new glasses, dude.
I wanted an app that I could just hold my phone up and it'd show me, change the colors to blue and yellow or something so I could tell.
They have like these new glasses there. It's totally crazy like that.
The Google like VR cardboard helmet thing. I wonder if they'll do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and then what's become even more interesting is that reality of watching how quickly industry changes, because I feel like an old man sometimes when I reminisce about like serial consoles and actually having to rack and stack servers, and it's not uncommon for me to run into people that are like, oh, what's a data center, dude? Like, that's the cloud. We don't deal with that. And most of them are joking at that point, but there are people that like honestly don't know that, oh, well, yeah, you can actually have access to the systems in this way, and you can do these other things. Or my favorite for those that are old enough to have run Sun Gear, someone wiggled the PM2E because we were too cheap to buy an actual console server and send them all to the OK prompt. Yeah.
Stop A, baby.
And for everybody out there that is listening to this or watching this that knows what I was just talking about, they've got a smile on their face. Everybody else is like, huh? Stop A? What's that?
I have no idea. Let the record show I have no idea what you're talking about.
I now need to go find a link to the Sun keyboard.
I'll just get my Solaris 9 certification.
The irony is I don't know that. I don't know if that actually covered that. You know what? It should have, because it was still Spark. But yeah. Oh. So much fun. So anything else crazy going on? Things people are interested in playing with?
Didn't reInvent just wrap up? Was anybody there?
No, it starts next week. Like, next week is like, holy crap. I was looking at our calendar, like, you've got reInvent, Lisa, and like DevOps Days Helsinki going on all at the same time.
Right. It's crazy. The conference season is becoming like the NHL season. Like, it's just going to start looping around, and we'll have race conditions. But it's just it's so long.
What bums me out is there aren't any conferences during the summer in Europe. I would love for there to be conferences during the summer in Europe, because my wife is a teacher, and I would love to be able to take my family out there, do a conference and then for a couple days, and then stay out in Europe for whenever.
I think you might have problems with tourists eating up all the hotel rooms, but you might be able to source some Airbnb accommodations or something. Especially with a whole family, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
I like the idea of like getting a whole house or like a whole apartment or something.
I'm waiting for the first time I go out to like Florida, like Orlando area, and instead of getting the conference hotel, I'm just going to use my timeshare. Like, you can buy. Come on, what are they called? They're called getaways, but you can do like a week for like $300. And if you or like 500 for the 2-bedroom, which is basically like an 1,800 square foot apartment for the week for like $500 a lot of times. So
what conferences are you going to in Florida?
Agile was in Florida recently.
That's right.
That's right.
This year it was.
Yeah, and then I think Lisa occasionally ends up out in Florida.
GatorConf.
Say again?
I just said GatorConf, which I don't know if that exists, but it probably exists.
Well, and it's interesting just to kind of watch where conferences end up versus where they don't end up. Like, and I would love to, and because I am a married man with kids, I can't like make these things happen. But it would be fun to do like destination conferences. Like, let's do a conference in Tahoe during the winter. So like it's SkiCon where
That's basically what DevOps Days is, man. It was like the whole reason that it started in the first place was like Patrick and Chris wanted to travel Europe, so they're just like, okay, let's have one in Rome, let's have one in there was Germany was like the second one that they did, and then they did Rome, and they jumped all over the place. Now they're talking about like they want to go to NASA, so they're trying to hook that up. We were having that conversation on Ship Show about how they're going to try and like source one in Hawaii so that they could jump down there, which I'm fully in support of.
Yeah, Chris, you missed the whole discussion at DevOps Days Ghent about doing a DevOps Days cruise, where we would like go from like Portland to Alaska or something like that on a cruise ship.
Oh, this could get crazy. And as the funny thing is, as much as we joke about it, for some of those, like a cruise would be hard because of the network aspect of it, but I could see something like doing something like
Well, so DevOps Days Rockies is going to be in Boulder.
But is it going to be during the middle of the winter?
No, I don't believe so. But maybe Jason could be persuaded to.
I also saw like Carnival or Princess Cruise Lines is upgrading their Wi-Fi so that it's gonna be a mix of terrestrial, like land-based stuff that you can see from that they can see from the boat, plus like satellite, plus like something else, and they're gonna try to create this brand new IP network where it's seamless to the people on the boat that you're switching between like all these different connectivity things. So I don't know, Chris. Like,
You've never seen conference Wi-Fi like cruise conference Wi-Fi.
Can't you just get a cruise ship that has a data center on the ship?
We just have to move down the entire internet, and we'll be good.
You have to run
like working in McMurdo.
Transatlantic, like cross-ocean cable and just sap it straight from the source.
You just tap in as you go. Why are we going in this way in the cruise? Oh, we're following the transoceanic cables.
Yeah. It's necessary. Shut up and use your iPad.
The worst part about it is you could for those that once again, I feel like an old man even knowing about this, but like there was a
I was like, what the fuck? Woo!
Okay.
that was kind of random.
He's been on the last couple. He shows up, says the same thing, and then vanishes. Luckily.
Yeah, the cigarette. Well, I couldn't tell if that was a cigarette or a blunt, but for those of us that are older, like if you remember ThickNet, like we could vampire tap the whole way through, right?
Yeah, 10 base 2.
Now, granted, my only experience with it is pulling it out of data center floors, but that's a whole other discussion.
I mean, in relation to what you were saying about where conferences are, I think it's pretty cool that a lot, and maybe I'm just noticing this, and it actually has been like this the whole time, but I'm kind of excited that Portland is actually getting a lot more real conferences, right? Puppet is moving Puppet Conf up there next year. And I know Jason has had a lot of luck with Monotorama up in Portland, and I think it's kind of
this year in Portland.
Right. And, San Francisco is a really expensive place to put on a conference, and for me, like, it's like an hour flight to get to Portland from here, so it's not that big a deal. I think it's really awesome that places like that are up and coming in terms of like the tech conference circuit.
Oh, and it's interesting also. I think, especially with DevOps Days, we've done a good job. Like I know the Ruby community is this way, and I know DevOps Days very much so as well. That goal of getting them spread out geographically. Let's get stuff going on in Chicago. Let's get stuff going on in Minneapolis. Let's get stuff going on in the Great Plains states. Like that focus on bringing it locally is just huge. And it's interesting to me, being in Southern California, you have this opposite problem. Like, well, San Francisco's not that far away, so we're just going to do everything in San Francisco, and it's kind of over San Francisco. So
I mean, Patrick was talking about that when Steve and I were with him on the Ship Show podcast, right? The idea of growing DevOps Days. Oh boy, I'm really going to geek this out for you guys. Making DevOps Days horizontally scalable instead of vertically scalable. It was like they really wanted to spread it out. They didn't want it to become a bigger conference like that would compete with, say, Velocity or something like that. It's like getting those, like, homegrown, like you said, a lot more of a grassroots thing where you bring it to people's, hometown. They thought that was a much better way of scaling it, and I would tend to agree. There's a lot of things that we even talked about in Ghent about leveraging the fact that people are putting on the DevOps Days in this way, as opposed to having that like one big mega conference or something like that. It's been a pretty good model, obviously.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to hear Patrick he sounds kind of nostalgic about the first 60-person DevOps days in Ghent, and we've proven the capacity that they can scale huge, like 600 people I think is the max for San Francisco, but Toronto was like 180 people, and it was an awesome size. Like it was really, really easy to manage, and for first time organizer, it's like super easy. But we're gonna we kind of have to double it next time, or else we'll sell out in 30 seconds. We kind of just
imagine also as a first-time attendee how nice it is when the conference isn't 2,000 people. Like how much more accessible it is.
yeah, like velocity, you might see someone day one and not see them the rest of the conference, right? Unless you're trying to find them actively on, hook up on Twitter or something.
Right, and the hallway track is probably a lot more robust when, like you said, you can see some of the same people. Like I've, met all kinds of amazing people at DevOps days in Belgium, and I kept bumping into them during the course of the conference, and we could continue conversations, or I could think about what we talked about the last time I bumped into them and be like, hey, you know what, I was thinking about that, and I think what we can do is we could do this, and that would make this even better, or whatever, but like, it's that repeated interaction that probably makes the hallway track a lot more robust.
That makes sense. And it's interesting even just thinking about like some of the places we've been where the hallway, you don't end up bumping into people in the hallway because of the way the hallway is. And so perfect example, I really thought the this year's PuppetConf, as far as the layout, was better than when we were at the was it the Fairmont?
Yep.
So the year before, because you ended up, it was pretty streamlined. You basically ended up going between a couple of places, and the bar area was obvious. So if someone had gone to just kind of hang out and wanted to work on something, you could go jump on the table and hang out with them because they were visibly there, And the hallway track itself, you weren't constantly like around corners. There were a couple of major like thoroughfares that you ended up discussing. Same was very true of Chef Summit this year. As you're walking down the hallway, it's a single hallway, so you run into people.
It's an interesting idea, especially for people like Steve who are organizing things like DevOps days, is how do you pick a venue that maximizes the benefit of the hallway track? If we all say, the hallway track is almost always the most valuable track at the conference, how do you, what are some guidelines for, how to pick a venue to be able to maximize the benefit of that?
All I try and do is just find something that's available. Like it's so hard to find a venue that can accommodate both like the theater seating for the morning and then breakout sessions for the afternoon. It's like whatever you find that's not crazy amounts of money is like what you've got to go for. But I mean, as far as what disqualifies spaces for me is if I can't have like food and sponsors and people in the same room sort of mingling together and have, that kind of keeps everyone happy where people can mill around and they're all sort of collected in a space where there's like incentives for everyone to be there. And then ideally that functions as, some kind of a centralized hallway area, right? Where it's joining the sessions. But
I mean, they did that really well at DevOps Enterprise Summit, right?
Yeah, see, DevOps Enterprise had a lot of different hallways, right? There were odds where, you might be entirely in one side of the venue, and then you don't actually get out to the other side, maybe at all, right? There were 4 different tracks, but DevOps Days is a little bit easier because single track means you don't have people hopping from place to place. So the hallway track becomes more of like the communal area track.
Makes sense. And it's interesting because one of the things I've been kind of pondering, because everybody's been talking about doing DevOps Days Legoland, and I've started kind of pondering what that would take to put on, and I'm going to reach out to some people soon locally and say, okay, let's make this a thing. But the frustration is like, if I want to do it near Legoland, I'm basically stuck at either a hotel or a brewery for things, and then that kind of if it's at a hotel, like it's going to be expensive because holy crap, food at hotels is expensive. But if it's at a brewery, that kind of kills like the whole kid atmosphere that we're kind of going for with Legoland. So like not to mention the other problem is and I guess the more I think about it, it doesn't matter as much because the focus is locals. But like Legoland isn't exactly close to the freeway. It's I'm sorry,
Looking like
it's
a
close
true
to the
LA guy.
it's close to the freeway. Rather, it's not really close to the airport. I mean, if you fly into SAN, you're probably
What's
30.
the? I mean, I haven't been privy to those conversations about Legoland. What's the desire to have an association? Oh, wow, perfect timing.
Yeah, I know, right?
What's the desire to have the association between DevOps days and kids?
More so, there's just a lot of there was a lot of discussion about wanting to be able to bring kids
Yeah.
to Legoland, and it would just I don't know. It's something that there have been a couple of comments made about it being family friendly, and
I mean, the thing I've been interested in is I've seen people, like, I think even at Velocity this year, somebody gave a talk with their daughter. Uh, that's a DevOps engineer. Somebody gave a talk with their daughter, and like I guess there was like a conference called, I don't remember what it's called. It was something up in the Wisconsin Dells where they have like all those water slides and stuff. But like one of the girls was one of the daughters like gave a talk about programming in Scratch, and like a bunch of kids went to that talk and whatever. So I kind of I have a 9-year-old daughter. Like she can code some mean stuff up in Scratch. Like I would be interested in having her participate and like learning about that kind of aspect of the business, which is a little bit older than I think like the Legoland part. So that's why I was curious, like, how did kind of what the motivation was behind that.
on that note, Dave, I'm actually going to say specifically to you, if your daughter is coding in Scratch, she should put in a talk proposal to the SoCal Linux Expo because they
Oh yeah,
absolutely go down that. They have like a track dedicated to kids.
nice. That's
And
awesome.
it it is it would be weird for me to go a day at during the main track, so the Saturday Sunday at SoCal Linux Expo, it would be weird to not see kids, to be frank.
That's
So yeah,
fantastic.
Didn't they
and
just start this? That the kids track was just started last year, right?
yeah, but there have been kids there for years. Like I don't remember a year that I've gone where there weren't kids running around. Um,
Yeah, especially the game night they have with the laser tag and that kind of stuff is a lot more kid friendly.
That's
yeah,
fantastic. Wow.
yeah. Oh, and by the way, for just because we're talking about the SoCal Linux Expo, while I'm on the committee for the DevOps Day, but like it's ridiculously cheap. Like it's less than $100, and whatever the price is 50% for students. So like I want to say I used to go when I was in education for sub $60. So
Right.
definitely worth the money.
I'll make
Um,
it up in either gas or flights.
exactly. And the drive isn't bad either, but but that's my craziness of being willing to drive 8 hours from San Francisco to LA.
It's happened. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I want to get her started on something more like Python soon. So she could probably give a pretty interesting talk on moving from a language like Scratch to a language like Python and what that's like for her as a kid.
That
Well, the
sounds
CFP is open till December 10th.
Yeah. All right. I better get on that.
All right. Well, we're getting towards the end. Any last things we want to talk about before we call it an afternoon? Or I guess call it a morning because we've still got a few minutes before afternoon hits, at least here on the West Coast.
not here. Happy after.
JJ found a domain, dude.
Yeah, I think DevOps certified.me. It sounds promising.
Awesome. We will have to start coding that up. That'll be fun. So cool. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful afternoon and a good week, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Cheers.